Hi there. Just to provide a little bit of context for this, so my name is Corey Rakowski. I'm a chef here in the city. Full transparency, I'm also a member of the Food Council. So growing up in Edmonton, I ended up being a client of YESS. I was within the child welfare system for a long time. Struggled with addiction, homelessness, and for myself, food and the kitchen itself, I've been in the kitchen 23 years, was always a means for me to derive a bit of stability, a hot meal every day. And it really helped me get the structure and discipline I needed to get my life together. Today, we had the fortunate circumstance to have a private session with Dr. Wayne Roberts, and he said something that really resonated for me, and I want to pose it to all of you and see how it relates to your jurisdictions and your method of leadership. He stated something along the lines that food has the ability to be a lever in any social enterprise or social situation. It doesn't matter if it's transportation, drainage, wastage, agriculture. And I want to know what you, in your jurisdiction and in your personal experiences, how you utilize that food as a lever.
Okay, we'll hold that in mind. And we had another question or comment here.
Well, actually, mine also is kind of a perception that I thought, if you allow me kindly and gently, I would like to bring this to the notion of the panel members, but also if you allow me, I'm going to play one of the panel members to be voice of a group that I think it's really missing in this forum, but also in the panel too. As you all know, food is not just the science, but also is one of the most complex science, and it's most diverse, but also it relates to all science. Like when you say food and philosophy, food and history, food and politics, food and industries, food and families, food and all, right? But then, when we say this forum, it's kind of the focus is about the food, cultivating connections, but also at the same time, we are talking about, what is known as the concept of the buzzword that you mentioned at the beginning, local. I'm going to create this new perception. Perhaps, we need to become more culturally sensitive to that. And this is one of the value of the Edmonton and Canada at large. According to this recent, even the vital sign report was given by the Edmonton Community Foundation, the 25% of the populations are the Edmontonians that I already have come many years ago as immigrant refugees or are still coming. And those are also representative of the real food too, into this whole culture. Because when you look at the history of the food, it didn't begin 200 years ago. It begins from the part of the world was known as the cradle of agriculture that was introduced to the world. If you all study, especially the older generation, about the concept of the Silk Road was one of the most complex food trading system ever, perhaps we can sort of copy this model, which is really matching to this time. Unfortunately, we have the Silk Road. It is already connected to Edmonton. What we need to have then actually, thinking of this small umbrella of the local, seeing it as a global local. If it wasn't for those grain that was produced, like kamut, which is the father of all the other grain and wheat, with the least amount of gluten that came from the old-time Persia, we wouldn't actually have all the other wheats too, perhaps. And now we're missing. See that? These are the things that actually needs to be embraced because this is cultivating connections and community engagement. I wish that, we could have a kind of a more diverse, representative so we can make these connections happen. Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in both of those. Both of them, I think, talked about how closely integrated food is into all aspects of our lives and our culture, so maybe we can reflect on that. But also, this intriguing idea about, how we connect what we're doing locally and globally and represent and value those kind of connections in our municipalities as well. Does anybody, you guys might have got more out of that too, so anything you want to respond to those 2 points? Chief Morin.
I'll go first. kind of just tackling the simplistic of what I heard, but both great comments. Thankful for those. Food as a lever, as I heard it, or just an item of action in your community. Very fortunate. The mayor was a very big part of reestablishing a brand, a rebranding, a decolonization of Enoch back to our traditional ways. And what he helped do was kind of even revive the name Muskegsic, which is land of the medicines. And what we refer that to is not just, we use traditional sweetgrass, we use rock and natural, those types of things as kind of just action items in our ceremonies. But on top of that, we also use food as a medicine. So medicine in general, what I would say, like a little bit of a cliche, is you want to eat just as well as you're taking medicine for your body. And what food is going to do for us is reestablish that past that we need to go back to as First Nations people. And it's going to be that lever for us, just one action item that we need every day. And it's already proving itself by our people taking better care of our land, putting our Sandhills area, which is a natural, why we call it Muskegsic, a natural place to go have ceremony, to grow traditional foods, to really establish an identity and a culture. And it's going to be through this kind of decolonization thing that we're doing. And food is a catalyst for that. Just hearing what you said, it's kind of making me realize that picking berries, hunting moose, those are medicines to us, and it's just an exciting time for First Nations people, especially the people of Muskegsic. So thanks for the comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mayor Iveson.
There was a program, and this kind of addresses tangentially both comments, which were fantastic. A program called Injera that the African community and Edmonton Police Service shared. And it was about intercultural learning and understanding. And Injera is a sort of a flatbread from some East African cultures. And so food became the gathering place to build trust between communities that did not have very strong trust. And it wasn't, so there's a long tradition of, if you want people to come to your open house, you advertise that you're going to have food. And if you don't want them to come to your open house, then there's all kinds of other things you
Why
can
do. You think we're all here?
But that's bad public engagement. So of course it's good to put food out, it's good to have childcare, it's good to have simultaneous interpretation. But you can put the colonizers' food out or the dominant culture's food out, or you can bring the dominant culture to the food of the other, or the exotic, or the marginalized, in whatever the case may be. And there's humility in coming to someone else that way, and I think that that's one of the strengths and successes of that program. And so in that way, I think food can be a very, very powerful lever, particularly for intercultural learning, and we desperately need as much of that as we can get in this day and age.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes.
I was just going to say, to kind of follow up on that as well, in Morinville, we identify as a Francophone community, and that's not something with our massive amount of growth we've had recently that most of the residents identify with. So it has been an interesting opportunity for us to be able to celebrate our heritage and talk a lot about culture and educate people, and we found the same thing, that the only opportunity to do that was to provide food and to provide it for free, because then you do get more people out. But one thing that we heard consistently in a lot of the community surveys we put out is that it's very difficult for someone who arrives in our community to make friends. And I mean, this is very simplistic, but just the opportunities for them to get into a situation where they would either be connected with someone or know someone were few and far between. And we found that these food-related cultural events were probably the best chance we could give them to sit at a big, long family-style table and enjoy food with someone else and just have a conversation. So it was a great kind of relationship-building piece. So I think we do that on a small scale as well. But the first thing I thought of, and this is kind of cheesy, I guess, but is that whenever we have a really tough meeting, like when Sturgeon County and Morinville were working through our IAC, so this big bylaw we were creating together, we'd always have the meeting and then we'd have food. So we made sure that no matter what happened, if we just had a big fight or whatever happened, and even at the CRB, at the Capital Region Board, some days we'd have lunch after, just to make sure that you always get together and have a chance just to reflect and sit and have a conversation and connect as people. So I think that is an important way to.
All right. My name is John Freebury. First of all, I do a little bit of permaculture, but I also am part of the Alberta Organic Producers Association. And I guess I had a question. It's a thing that sort of bugs me about cities. And it has to do with the use of chemicals and pesticides and herbicides, which are really meant to be used industrial and are used heavily industrially outside the city. But I see them used a lot inside the city. At every hardware store, every Home Depot, every Canadian Tire sells a lot of these chemicals. And I'm wondering, what can this group, this municipal regional group, and First Nations communities do to actually put in place meaningful regulation to create, I guess, uphold the rights of nature, the rights of Mother Earth, and the dignity that we need for our right to a healthy, clean environment through some way of dealing with this issue? Because in the city, it is becoming, I think, a major issue that you go to do something in the city and you don't know actually what's happened to that soil. You have no idea whether it's very poisonous, whether it's clean, and it can actually be a real barrier to people getting out and gardening. So that's
Thank you. And in the middle, I think we had, yep.
I think we've got like 5 questions, Kevin.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll do a round of 3, and then because you're so enthusiastic, we'll do another round after that, okay?
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you to everyone who organized this event. This is my first time at a thing like this. I really appreciate that. I guess I've got 2 comments I wanted to make. One, I'll just jump off of Chief Morin's comment about food and medicines and looking at food as medicine. I don't know if there's such a thing as Cultivating Medicine Forum, but maybe the next time you have one of these, if we could have Cultivating Food and Medicines. That's one thing I'm always doing in these little voice your opinions about parks and stuff. What do you want to see in the parks around here? And medicine gardens. I personally harvest sweetgrass and sage, on Treaty 6. And then secondly, I'd like to see incorporated, which people always leave out, the spiritual aspect of food as well.
Thank you. And, okay.
Right over here. Thank you very much. I don't actually have a real question. I just have a comment. And the comment stands around a part of our city that used to be called, as my children came to Storyland Valley Zoo. And I know that this is a little bit slightly off topic, except for the fact that I do know and understand that in the very near future, the thousands of children that visit Storyland Valley Zoo are also going to be having the opportunity to plant seeds into the ground and to pull carrots in the fall. And if there's a voice in this room that's not been heard, it's a 3-year-old that's going to learn what the word gardening really stands for. And for that, I applaud the initiative of the group that took that on to change it, and the partnership that a company that I belong to that is funding some of that change. And I think, again, for all of us in this room, I think we're here because we're relying on all of us to change what the future looks like for the next generation that today can't be with us. Because they're 3 years old and better be in bed.
I got a couple around here somewhere. We'll come to you. I want to give the panel a chance to respond to that before we take too many more questions. So we had concerns about the other environmental impacts of pesticides. We had thinking about our landscape, not just in terms of food, but in medicine. And then I think a point that you had mentioned earlier about education and school is very important. Mayor Flynn.
Yeah, the talk about educating our kids and getting them more familiar with the food chain and how it happens. That's something I'm passionate about. I think we have a great opportunity in a rural environment close to the city where we can draw people out and help our kids understand all the pieces. How to milk a cow, Bill and John will teach you how to milk a cow. They've probably done enough of that, but all of those kinds of things, they need to get connected to the earth to better understand where it comes from and why it's there and all of those things. And to address the security with organics and chemicals and all those kinds of things, our agricultural people are working hard at that. That balance between productivity and making a good living and trying to be as healthy as they can they're starting to really look at all the systems that they can use to take advantage of that. It's a big change for them. Their common method of production as far as grain and livestock is more about how much can they produce. And there are many of them starting to look at what the quality is and what the connection with natural things are, and looking at all of those pieces, keeping land the way it should be. We're starting to really see a big change in there. But I have to say that I'm probably sitting here learning more than I can give. There's so much about the interest in urban agriculture and what it means to urban people that I have to learn, and we as rural municipality also have to learn. So you're giving me a lot of food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the city has worked hard and fought mercilessly at our council over the pesticide and herbicide question. Each of the 3 councils I've sat on, and we've made middling progress on the city side in terms of our parks, but we made some progress there. But that's as far as we were able to get with council. There are very firmly entrenched views around property rights and a very strong lobby with the opposite perspective that you have that is persuasive to a majority of city council 3 times in a row. So that's 6 and 7 in Pickham, and that's where we're at. But that may change this fall. You never know. So it's a work in progress, a conversation about it. But the city has and council has worked to reduce as much as possible the use on city lands, for what it's worth.
Chief Morin?
You know, as much as I really would like to be a part of the Capital Region team, and as a First Nation, we have a lot of catching up to do with being a part of these regulations and these systems and these types of things. The amount of actual non-regulation that exists gives us an opportunity to push this even farther than anybody's doing it in the Capital Region. So I love a challenge. Maybe this is something I take back, and that we can be the first people around the Capital Region to take it even to the next step or the next step beyond that. Because as much as we're trying to catch up, it's still an opportunity for us to take even a quicker step than my colleagues might have with some of the regulation and jurisdiction from the province or their own internal municipal legislation that they have to go through. Again, kind of an exciting opportunity for us if we took on that challenge as First Nations people, and we really should actually.
Thank you. I just wanted to say something to all the council members that it's kind of like Kevin Costner's movie, if you build it, they will come. As far as the providing that space for people to grow their own food within urban environments, I don't think it's going to be an issue of who's going to attend that. Personally. And then also in that, there's a lot of people that have lawns within the city. As we go on, water use is going to be a main issue. So, you know, does the city provide for people converting their spaces from grass into food growing areas within their urban lots? And also, you know, I think I'm a seed grower myself, and as we go on in climate change, we have endless opportunities for people even in community garden situations to grow and breed vegetable and food varieties within those small plots that provide the seeds for the future. Because we're going to have seed sources that are able to deal with all the environmental stresses that we come across every day as time goes on. Also, just back to the spirituality and I think most people feel disconnected in some way in a lot of different regional groups, in a lot of different ethnic groups as well. The more that people can get back to growing their own food and some connection with nature, even if it's a small part, will help them reconnect to that within them, make some sort of meaning in their life when everything seems to be so fast-paced. It allows you just to have a moment to connect with something that's bigger than you. And I think that's a healing thing in itself.
Okay, Thank you. We've got one at the front here, Hanny, that's been waiting a long time. So what I'm going to, yeah, I was thinking the same. Here, you borrow this one.
We've all heard how important food is when we want to convene a meeting, bring people together and share thoughts. I'd like to find out from the four of you how well you advocate for sourcing local food for your meetings, for example, not from local Safeway store, but from local farmers and from local processors and the caterers you use.
There was this mention of value added. The two of you were kind of throwing that between yourselves, and I didn't quite understand what you mean by value added. So I just, first of all, wanted to, I think I know it is, but I wanted, before I actually give my comment, I just would like to actually really see if I'm really understanding it. So if you could just explain what value added means. And then I want to actually respond. Yeah.
She's not
but I want to make sure.
I'll address the value added right away for you.
Yeah.
No different than the petrochemical business where we're sending oil down the pipeline and we're not doing the things to make it into the other products that the world might be able to use. Similarly, with simple things like our wheat, we send a lot of our wheat away from here to feed people in other parts of the world where we could be producing products from it, whether it's cereals or various things like that. We can take the milk from a dairy farm, and why aren't we producing the cheese and some of those things? So we're adding value to the products. So we keep that production here, and we add that value so that there are other sources of revenue for the guys on the farm, and it supports the local economy and it supports the local food economy. So that's a very important part. That's what I refer to, and we can build lots on that. There's lots of opportunity there to do those things. We're sending too much of it out of this space without doing anything with it to make it more valuable. So that's work that we can do, supply employment, supply food for our region and the rest of the world by adding value and making this into the food capital of Canada and maybe the world. We have a big basket of opportunity there that we really have to pursue. So that's a significant part.
Okay, and I guess my concern would be, I'm a seed keeper. I grow garlic, and I have 5 different heritage varieties, actually in the Sturgeon County area, right outside of Morinville on Range Road 642. So one of the bits of feedback I'm constantly getting when when I'm selling my garlic is like, I'm just so glad this isn't from China. You know, that that you're growing it here, and that I have an opportunity to connect with you. And I have we're talking about cultivating connections. And so there's this relational exchange that happens when this garlic is exchanged. And I think that would be my concern when you're talking about value added, because maybe bigger is an indicator for success, and that that's going to a broader market out there. But my concern is that you're potentially taking a lot of value out of it. You're taking that relational value out of it, because again, what I am seeing as a seed keeper is for every dollar I'm making, I'm actually making a lot of value in terms of relationships. So that's something you can't put a price tag on. That we've just been talking about urban growth, and you talked about, at the beginning, oh yeah, we can't do, or that there's a limit to the vision, right? We maybe get to be idealists, and we have to kind of go, okay, right, maybe it's a 20-year plan, maybe it's this. But you talked about growing out, growing up, but we didn't talk about growing in. And again, I'm just going to bring it back to relationships. So
thank you. I really do have to move, because we had a question about using our front yard space and the small scale, and we had a question about procurement. I probably will ask Don the question about how the City of Edmonton, as I imagine your catering budget must be pretty good. I've sampled it a few times. Could you?
Yeah, I don't think we have specific policy on procurement. I know some jurisdictions have gone that way, and I understand why. We had some controversy around an element of that, which was less about where you get it from and more about what it was, that I think created some tension with council. That's a whole other story. So we don't have a specific policy, but I understand the value of that policy. I understand the case study from Toronto. If it was up to me, I would move in that direction, but it's not unilaterally up to me. So it's a good point, and I think it's something to continue to advocate for and push on, because I think, particularly for garlic, we're well supplied locally. So, and on that point, I think there's room for both. I wouldn't want to substitute industrial agricultural production at the expense of relationship-based local food. I just think that for some producers, they'll be able to do both. And the world is very hungry, and we have great growing conditions here and a great enterprise spirit. So I think we can do both without losing track of each other. And on growing up, we could do another 2 hours on infill, but I already did that on Wednesday, so we'll save that one for another night. So.
I didn't think you wanted to go there.
Lisa.
Well, one thing that struck me when I was listening to the question over here was, I think in the growth plan we learned that, I think I'm right, at 40% of our population is under the age of 30 in the region. And one thing I think that we've seen, and I might be totally preaching to the choir, but at least you'll understand that, at least I can acknowledge and know this, that there's been a big generational change and societal change and cultural change in how we view gardening, especially in families. And so I think that there's a bit of a lost generation out there. And I can consider myself to be one of those that my grandparents gardened, my mom sort of learned how, but then because she worked full time, did not teach that to me. And now I'm very knowledgeable about the fact that this is a skill that my children need to learn, but I'm not able to teach them. And so one thing that I think we've really tried to focus, again, in Morinville is on intergenerational programming and opportunities to have skills taught by others that you can't teach yourself. And I think that's a big piece of this is people will come if you give the space, but they also need to know how. And you need the volunteers and the infrastructure and the network of educators who are probably the best ones are community members and seniors and people who can get out there and really advocate and teach the younger people those skills. In regards to procurement, I'm pretty sure Morinville's small enough that we know everybody and we just go around the circle. And I do apologize because I think that there's an interpretation on value add, and it's a term that we use a lot, but the interpretation for me is mostly just that it just changes the product into something else that is marketed in a different way. Not that, because there really isn't a relationship in that space, but I think that what you're offering is a completely different stream of value. And in no way do I mean that there's no value to the product or that we're adding to the product. It's mostly economics.
Thank you. I can see people lining up behind me, which means I should probably ask you each very briefly, because we've gone over time, because we have such an engaging audience, to offer us some final concluding thoughts on the topic. Can we work from that end this way, and then we can say some thank yous?
Well, keep pushing, not just me, but my council colleagues, because it takes 13 of us, or at least 7 out of 13, to make some of these changes. And I think there's room to grow, and the Food Council has been a sort of an interim step there, but I think there's opportunities for us to go further on a lot of the themes that were discussed today. And in particular around permaculture, which I'm a fan of, don't get me wrong. If you look at a picture of the river valley from the 1950s, it will look very odd if you're used to the river valley of today, because there are almost no trees. And this whole naturalization and planting trees on the slopes thing came since then. And so we completely changed the ecology of our river valley not that long ago, and people forget. And so permaculture is a much smaller undertaking, and yet it's not without precedent for the city to say, yes, we can make a significant change that has a bunch of triple bottom line benefits. And the naturalization program is part of that carbon sequestration, part of that rainwater and drainage capture already. And if permaculture can help us achieve some of those same objectives in areas that are costing us a lot of money to deal with pesticides and with mowing today, then I'm very open to that. And as a takeaway from this, taking that back to our parks and horticulture agriculture people, and thinking about how that fits into our climate and energy transition strategy, to our biodiversity strategy, and to our community engagement strategies, because at the end of the day, it is about opportunities to bring people together. So thank you for reminding me of that tonight.
Thank you. Mayor Flynn.
Thank you very much. Very much enjoyed the evening and learning about the urban side of agriculture, because that's not something I'm normally exposed to or grew up in. It was about producing more. I'll extend the invite for those that want to come and learn about agriculture. We have some great opportunities, some great places out in the country that are a day drive, a Sunday afternoon drive, where you can enjoy and see some of those things. And if you really want to come and join us in August sometime, early August, we put on an agricultural tour that we take busloads of people. It's a heck of a deal. I think they normally charge $10 for the day, and it includes lunch. You come out and we tour agriculture throughout the county. And we go and see, last year we were at what I call a self-propelled barn, dairy barn, where the cows go and milk themselves. You guys won't believe that, but it happens. And we went to a place where we have people that are producing a lot of honey that I didn't even know was in the county. So we see lots of things, the market gardens, the U-picks, all of those kinds of things. You can come and learn with us. So watch our website and go on that website and sign up. Everybody's welcome. We'll just get more school buses, and you can come enjoy the farmers and the ag people for the day. A lot of our seniors like to go, including Lisa's seniors. They always come and visit with us for the day. And at the end of the day, we hold a culinary cookout in the Cardiff Park, where we have some of the kids learning to cook, and we have market garden, the local products, all of those kinds of things. So we're trying to connect and help that education part of it. I'd love to see you out.
Thank you very much. Chief Morin.
You know, it's not a cliche. It's truly, I'm just lucky to be a part of this as a First Nations person, but I correlate this conversation of in a time of reconciliation in this region, as much as it wants to be the capital of food, it's very much becoming one of the capitals of reconciliation. And for the local leaders, I thank them for that. And what this is kind of going off in my mind is what one of my mentors would say is putting reconciliation into play. And what I really, really love is that embracing First Nations knowledge of land and food, and that thing is truly going back to spirituality. I'm not going to say that as a young leader that I know, but I certainly know that our elders know. And going back to this, that if you can engage us, if we can be a part of these tables, and I'm sure we're gonna be there. I think as complex as this conversation becomes with science and a whole bunch of things, our elders are going to come back into the room and they're going to ground this conversation where it needs to go. As this place heals with reconciliation, so too does our land and our spirit. And it's not a cliche. It's a great energy around just this capital region. And again, going back to spirituality, a little bit of what I think our elders can bring is, again, that grounding. So overarching, as much as we have the spirit of the food, we also have the medicine wheel. And that medicine wheel, food inspires emotions. Food inspires mental capacity. Food inspires the physical body. And our elders would very much like the opportunity to come and be part of, I guess, the reconciliation of food and the land sustainability of this capital region.
Thank you. Lisa, the final word.
Well, thank you again. Like I said at the beginning, I am, as the mayor of Morinville, a very proud member of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region, and I've learned so much more tonight of reasons why. I think that we once said that a politician's only as good as the information that they receive on a decision, and I think that a good politician is one that views a decision through as many different lenses as they possibly can. And we used to really just focus on perhaps like economic reasons or maybe going into more social. We're really starting to see things on a broad spectrum now and gathering as many different perspectives as we possibly can when we're looking at things, especially at the municipal level, because we are the closest to the people in the community, and we live in our own communities, and we're there and we want to make them better. And this is an area that I think that is just growing in the observance of the importance of it, but also in the knowledge and expertise. So, I mean, my offering is that I think that municipal politicians want to do the best they can for each of you, and that the more education that we can offer to them on the importance and the different areas that you feel are important, the better the decisions that they'll make on your behalf. So thank you. I've learned a lot as well, as Tom said, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Can we offer thanks to our panel?